But the real demonstration started when they got to White Clay.
I know a lot of people. The only way our people are heard is when we take it to a drastic level.
Which is why 5 protesters from Deep Green Resistance locked arms in the middle of the road in White Clay.
They asked to give a little bit of time to settle the situation.
That was after the situation escalated to the point of arrests. One minor involved in the protest was cited for a weapons violation and released to his mother, but not before bystanders say they caught facefuls of pepper spray.
As I was filming from behind the cop car, the window came down and he held out his mace can and sprayed another youth right full in the face who wasn't a threat to him, who was just trying to talk to the officer.
One accidental victim, a 10-year-old boy.
Oh, that's a problem with deploying mace. You can't control it once it comes out of the container.
Collateral damage or not, Sheridan County Sheriff Terry Robbins says from the information he has, the use of pepper spray was probably justified.
Mace is not de-escalating.
That protesters say neither is pushing through crowds with a police cruiser. Regardless of the tension, though, the demonstration against liquor stores that some report move upwards of 12,000 cans of beer a day in just a 14-person town remained largely calm.
Keep it peaceful. I don't want to see none of our relatives, any more of us, go to jail.
But that's exactly what the protesters on the highway were prepared for.
You're in violation of a lawful order given by a Nebraska state trooper. As such, you're subject to arrest.
And troopers made good on that at around 8:15, about 7 hours after the protesters first sat down. And a protester on the scene tells us the 5 were arrested and carted off, still locked together in a horse trailer. Information on charges and where they're being held was not immediately available. We'll have more on yesterday's tragic shooting coming up in just a bit, but first we turn to a heartwarming story from right here in Coda territory. A little girl with a big heart bringing even bigger joy to a family who needed it. Meet Kennedy.
And how old are you, Kennedy?
7.
7.
She had a mission today.
I had a couple ideas.
Like countless people across the country, Kennedy spent the morning Christmas shopping.
Want to get her one of these?
Mm-hmm.
The difference, she had never met the people she was shopping for. It all started 2 months ago with a tragedy.
We lost my brother-in-law, who was more like a son to me.
Arlie McClellan was just 18 years old when he died in a car crash near Dupree on October 12th. Carrie and Mariah McClellan's oldest daughter, Kennedy, wanted to help somehow.
The guidance counselor suggested maybe she do something in memory of her uncle.
Something the second grader took to a whole new level.
Any parent's dream is to have a little girl do something like this that could touch other people's lives.
With the help of Church Response, Kennedy's parents helped her find a family in need. Then she started raising money and didn't stop.
1, 2, 3. About $945 total.
She was even getting more donations while she was trying to spend the money she had already gotten.
Now you have $100 more. Go for it, girl.
She bought clothes.
I think this one would be good.
Toys.
This is kind of cool, Mom.
And gift cards for 5 kids living with their grandparents in a small apartment. The grand total, close to $1,000.
And you get 44 cents back.
2 hours later, the presents were wrapped and they were headed to their new home.
My heart was just pounding when we were walking down the hall.
I didn't know what they looked like or anything.
This is the little girl.
This is Kennedy.
Thank you, Kennedy. Thank you.
It was great sitting there watching them open the gifts, and everybody shed a tear.
Grandpa, I got new shoes.
Today we are very blessed. I never expected nothing like this to happen. You know, she's a little girl with a big heart.
What Christmas is all about is miracles. And Kennedy's our little miracle.
I know Arlie is smiling big from up in heaven.
And even though the kids did open most of their presents early this afternoon, and let's face it, who can blame them, Kennedy bought enough so they'd each have something to open on Christmas too. Police responded at about 9:15 last night. When they got there, 58-year-old Brad Swanson told officers he had shot and killed his girlfriend.
When officers outside the apartment lost contact with Swanson.
There's one person that has control of the incident, and that's the suspect himself.
Lieutenant James Johns was called to the scene in the very early stages of their response.
We knew already that he had used a weapon against another person.
Thanks to a call from one of Swanson's family members. When the special response team entered apartment 3C on Woodrun Lane, they found Swanson and his live-in girlfriend, 55-year-old Deb Olmacher, with gunshot wounds. Both were pronounced dead at the scene.
It generally indicates that somebody's not, either suffering from depression or some significant mental illness.
Pennington County State's Attorney Glenn Brenner says the circumstances seem consistent with some sort of mental instability. Johns couldn't confirm a criminal history, but said Swanson, quote, is not unknown to the police department.
There isn't a prosecution or an investigation that needs to continue other than to get some answers as to why this occurred.
We've got a responsibility to make sure that everything is looked at.
A responsibility to the victims and to the community.
Maybe there's a lesson to be learned. Maybe there's something that can be applied to another relationship.
Now, I was at the scene earlier this afternoon, and investigators were going in and out of both the upstairs and downstairs doors, but weren't really bringing anything out with them. I did notice at least one of the orange numbers on the driveway was marking a shell casing, but it's still not clear how that fits into what happened. Helene? A day later, questions surface about the weather system that produced such serious damage.
We seen it coming from Nebraska, and we thought it was just a rain cloud coming.
But the clouds brought with them enough wind to destroy Macaw Moves Camp's home, as well as his mother's on the same lot.
That's just like somebody just blew us away,
There were 10 people inside the mobile home at the time, the youngest 5 years old.
The bottom line is we're alive, These are material things you see behind us. We can always replace them.
I'm standing here in the middle of where 2 homes stood just 24 hours ago. This porch and a few cinder blocks are all that survived.
That level of damage, along with the localized nature of it, has some wondering if a tornado and not just high winds blew through the area. The National Weather Service reports gusts up to 60 miles per hour, but says there wasn't any rotation on the radar.
I figured if there was damage, I wanted to document it.
So that's what Red Cloud school teacher Peter Hill did. He says it looks like the winds followed a path through a few homes and knocked down telephone poles on one side of the street, but not the other.
Lived out these parts for a long time, seen a lot of storms, and it's the worst damage I've ever seen from a storm.
Some displaced homeowners are staying with friends and family, while others, like Macaw, are being put up at the Prairie Wind Casino while they figure out how to dig out and start over.
The past 10 years of our lives gone in a second. It didn't break our spirits, it just broke our homes. And we'll be here again.
Several people were sent to the Pine Ridge Indian Health Services Hospital for monitoring, but the extent of their injuries is still unknown. The tribe will work with the Red Cross to clean up.
Chris Davis joins us live in the studio to examine what brought Robert to the state penitentiary in the first place. Chris?
Helene, Robert was just 5 years into an 80-year sentence for kidnapping. Today, I talked to the state's attorney who helped prosecute the case in Meade County back in 2005.
He sat in the courtroom and he'd, be quiet and respectful of the process.
Prosecutors outlined the case against Eric Robert of Piedmont. Deputy State's Attorney Tracy Decker recalls Robert managed to pull over an 18-year-old girl near Blackhawk.
He approached her and indicated he was a plainclothes police officer. He had her get out of her car and perform field sobriety tests, which is how he got her back by her trunk.
He then forced her into her trunk and started to drive away. The girl was able to call police with a cell phone, and officers found the car parked on the side of the road about a mile from where she was abducted.
We were convinced that he meant to sexually assault this girl that he had put in her trunk.
Attorneys pointed to duct tape and rope in Robert's car as evidence. He was sentenced in January 2006 to 80 years in prison. 5 years later, he pled guilty to killing prison guard Ronald Johnson.
I don't think it ever crossed anybody's mind at that time that he would do something like this.
Robert and alleged accomplice Rodney Burgett killed the guard during a failed escape attempt.
It still surprised me a little bit that he was involved in that.
The men beat Johnson with a lead pipe and wrapped his head in plastic wrap.
I've been doing this job long enough. I think, people are capable of just about anything.
The escape failed when Robert, dressed in Johnson's uniform, was stopped at the gate. Robert pled guilty in September of last year and is set to die by lethal injection tonight at 10.
I hope that the victim's family can maybe find some peace with it eventually, although they're still missing their loved one.
Burgett also pled guilty in that killing, but is seeking an appeal of his death sentence.
82 steps and almost 60 feet up, Karen Malloy stands and watches.
For the Northern Hills, I'm the tallest.
She looks for smoke.
And watch the weather because 99% of our fires are lightning caused.
Malloy, who, by the way, is afraid of heights, mans one of just 5 fire lookout towers still active in the Black Hills National Forest.
Warren Peak. It's kind of easy in a way because white smoke stands out real clear on the Black Hills.
But then comes the slightly harder part.
Once you see it, you got to find out, know where it's at, call dispatch so they can start sending people to it.
Now in her 7th season at the top of the cramped Warren Peak Tower, where she actually lives for the summer, Malloy says it's kind of like camping.
I don't even miss the internet or TV because I have all this for my views.
The only drawback, the bathroom is 82 steps away.
You have a good day. Warren Peak clear.
Near Sundance.
Okay, thank you.
Chris Davis, Coda Territory News.